My husband, just so he could be with Jessica, actually orchestrated a kidnapping where I was repeatedly humiliated by men claiming to be a construction crew. Ultimately, my body was severely damaged, my kidney ruptured, and I was left dependent on a colostomy bag for life. Faced with his subsequent feigned concern and hypocritical care, I suppressed the pain and rage inside, pretended to be compliant, secretly contacted Michael Lee to gather evidence, and finally sent him to prison. Before my father passed away, he left me an unfinished house. The day the house renovation was completed, David suddenly said he had something to do and couldn't go with me to take possession. I went to the new house alone, only to be repeatedly humiliated by men who claimed to be the construction crew. Ultimately, my body was severely damaged, my kidney ruptured, and I was left dependent on a colostomy bag for life. David's eyes were bloodshot as he slapped himself dozens of times, crying that he hadn't protected me well enough. My adopted sister, who had moved abroad, came back to the US overnight, hugging me and sobbing uncontrollably, cursing David for not being a man and insisting on staying to take care of me. I didn't want to be a burden on my family who loved me. In the middle of the night, as I was quietly preparing to leave, I heard ambiguous sounds coming from my adopted sister's room. It's a good thing you thought of this plan back then, finding people to pretend to be the construction crew and mess up her body. Now, under the guise of taking care of her, we could move in. Otherwise, how could we be this openly happy? Who told that old man not to leave all his property to me? If he didn't leave it to me, don't blame me for fighting for it myself. But she is my sister after all, and it's not so bad having her depend on us like this, right? I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. The two people I had loved most had long been together. My adopted sister, whom I had grown up with, had even had me brutalized like this just for this house. But she didn't know that my father had also left 2 inheritances of tens of millions. As long as she was good to me, she could get one of them. Then why didn't you just have Sarah killed off back then? Otherwise, we wouldn't have to take care of her so painstakingly now. David's voice, mixed with low panting, reached my ears. I subconsciously clenched the fist hanging by my side. Are you stupid? If she died directly, and I moved in with you, how bad would my reputation be? But it's different now. Who wouldn't say we're the best husband and sister in the world? Jessica's voice held a hint of smugness. Besides, don't you think it's more exciting with her in this house? Since we're seeking excitement, let's see it through, right, brother-in-law? Listening to their back and forth flirting, it felt like icy blades were shooting up from the ground, piercing me through. The cold, painful feeling overwhelmed me. The two people in the room having an affair behind my back were my husband, David, and my adopted sister, Jessica, whom I'd grown up with. For the past 3 years, they had showered me with care. After the incident, when I was in the hospital room, in such pain I wanted to insert the 4-line into my neck to end my life, Jessica had rushed out and held me. Later, for my mental health, David even got certification as a therapist. I had countless times felt lucky to have such loving and caring family members, but today, I realized I was a complete fool. It turned out the disaster 3 years ago wasn't just bad luck, it was a trap set for me by the two people closest to me. Their constant declarations of love were just a game, a cruel trick. I wanted to push open the door and expose that adulterous couple, but in my condition, I couldn't possibly fight them. As I hesitated, they finished. David lowered his head and kissed Jessica intimately on the forehead. Okay, I'll go see if Sarah is awake. The sleeping pills haven't seemed as effective lately. It would be trouble if she woke up and didn't see me. Jessica hummed in response. Hearing that, I snapped back to reality and quickly walked to the living room, preparing to hide my suitcase. I had originally planned to leave secretly today because I felt truly indebted to David and Jessica for their meticulous care. But who could have imagined that tonight I would stumble upon the entire truth? I tiptoed into the living room. My hand had just touched the handle of the suitcase when David's slightly panicked voice came from behind me. Sarah, where are you going with that suitcase? I turned around, meeting David's probing gaze. My eyes were red, and tears were still on my face. He must have been terrified that I had discovered his affair with Jessica. I didn't speak, just lowered my head in silence. David strode forward, directly taking the case from my hand. The concern in his voice didn't seem fake. It's so late, and you're not well. What are you doing with a suitcase? I don't want to be a burden on you and Jessica anymore. I looked up, my eyes filled with tears, at David. Suppressing the nausea, I buried my face in his chest. Hearing my words, he clearly relaxed. Burden? Jessica and I taking care of you is what we should do as your family. How could it be a burden? David said, holding me tightly and comforting me softly. You're our treasure, Jessica's and mine. We'd do anything for you. What's wrong? Sarah, what are you doing with the suitcase? Hearing the commotion, Jessica hurried out. She was wearing a light slip dress, the hickey on her neck completely exposed before me. Seeing Jessica, David instantly put distance between us. Nothing, Sarah might be feeling down and thinks she's a burden. She's throwing a tantrum about leaving home. A flicker of scrutiny crossed Jessica's face, then she came over and hugged me, comforting me. Sarah, what are you thinking? We've told you. David and I are your family. Taking care of you is what we're supposed to do. Just relax and accept our care. Listening to their insincere concern, a cold laugh rose inside me. Just minutes before, they had been passionately intertwined, mocking my injuries and finding excitement in my suffering. Now, they were pretending to love me. This fake, dirty family affection, I wanted none of it. Okay, I'll put the suitcase away. You're not allowed to do anything silly like this again, Jessica said as she put away my suitcase, while David put his arm around my shoulder. They exchanged a look, then led me back to the room. Sarah, when did you wake up? Seeing me lying in bed, David asked tentatively. I looked at him and said, I just woke up not long ago. I didn't see you when I woke up. Where did you go just now? Were you in Jessica's room? David narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at me, then came over and took my hand. I just went to Jessica's room. You're not well, and Jessica found a professional nutritionist to customize a new diet for you to help you recover. Since I'm busy with work during the day, and you go to bed early, I only went to see her after you fell asleep. Listening to his explanation, I closed my eyes. David held me close. Sarah, don't worry, there's nothing going on between Jessica and me. Don't overthink it. Smelling Jessica's scent on him, I forcefully suppressed the nausea rising in my throat. Of course, I believe you and Jessica. After all, you two are the only family I have in this world. You're so good to me, I'm sure you would never do anything to hurt me, right? I looked up at David. Hearing my last sentence, a hint of guilt flickered across David's face, then he coaxed me. Of course. David, swear to God, I will never do anything to hurt Sarah. David stayed until he saw me fall asleep before leaving. The next day when I woke up, David and Jessica were already sitting at the table. On the plates in front of them were a variety of breakfast items, while in front of me was just a bowl of plain noodles and broth that looked like it had been thrown together, without even an egg added. My breakfasts had been like this for years. David's excuse was that I wasn't well and should eat easily digestible food, otherwise it would be bad for my stomach. For 3 years, I had eaten these perfunctory meals, and I had even been full of gratitude, believing it was my husband and Jessica being good to me. But now, it seemed they were probably laughing at me inwardly as they heartily ate their delicious food in front of me. Thinking this, I reached out to take a warm pastry from in front of Jessica, but as soon as my hand touched the pastry, Jessica slapped my hand with a chopstick. I pulled my hand back in pain and looked up, meeting the fleeting look of mockery on Jessica's face. Oh, did I hurt you, sister? Jessica pulled my hand, her voice full of concern. I didn't mean to, I was just a little anxious seeing you reach for this warm pastry. You were so humiliated before and now you have to rely on a colostomy bag to keep your body functioning normally, so it's better to eat easily digestible things. Things like pastries aren't as easy to digest as noodles, are they? That's right. Would Jessica hurt you? You're so frail, the food we normal people eat isn't suitable for you. Just eat that bowl of noodles. David chimed in at this point to help her out. My gaze fell on the bowl of clear, watery noodles. Their words from yesterday still seemed to echo in my ears. What do you mean, food for normal people? Just because I was injured, I'm not even considered a normal person anymore? A warm pastry is light enough, isn't it? There are plenty of other light foods, right? Why is my plate always just the simplest, least appetizing plain noodles and broth? After saying this, I turned to walk back to my room, but then I heard Jessica crying behind me. Seeing this, David called out to me, "Sarah, don't take advantage of being sick to bully people like this. Come here and apologize to Jessica immediately. We're doing this for your own good. What kind of tantrum are you throwing?" I turned back and saw Jessica huddled in David's arms, crying her eyes out. No, don't blame my sister. I think it's understandable for her to be unhappy with her body like this. David stared intensely at me. Sarah, apologized to Jessica. Seeing that they weren't even willing to pretend anymore, my heart turned cold. David, do you still remember which one of us sisters is actually your wife? David and Jessica's bodies visibly stiffened. I turned and went back to my bedroom, opened my phone, and called Michael Lee. Michael Lee, the property my father left me doesn't need to be divided anymore. And withdraw the investment in David's business. Jessica wasn't my biological sister, she was the child of my father's friend and 2 years older than me. Back then, my father's friend had an accident, leaving her an orphan. My father couldn't bear to see her alone, so he brought her home and raised her as his adopted daughter. When my father passed away 5 years ago, he left 2 portions of his will, one was $3 million in cash, and the other was the house we currently lived in. Jessica chose the $3 million cash, while I chose the unfinished house. After my father died, Jessica chose to move abroad, and I married David, whom I had been dating for 2 years. For 2 years, I personally oversaw and designed the unfinished house my father left me, turning it into my ideal home. When the construction team said it was ready for possession, David and I went together. But halfway there, David said he had something to do and needed to go back to the company, telling me to take possession alone. I didn't think there was any problem, so I went by myself. However, I didn't expect that in my own house, I would be dragged into a storage room by that group of so-called construction workers and humiliated for nearly 6 hours. When David appeared, the construction crew had already left, and I was barely conscious. David held me, crying uncontrollably and slapping himself repeatedly in regret. Jessica, who had received the news, also rushed back. Outside the hospital room, she cursed David for not being a man, unable to protect his own wife. I was sent to the hospital and stayed for 3 months. 3 months later, I was taken back to that house, and all the furnishings had been changed to Jessica's preferred style. Jessica held my hand and said, "Sister, it's not that I wanted to change the style, but I was afraid that seeing the house as it was before would remind you of bad things." At the time, I buried myself in Jessica's arms and thanked her profusely. But now, it seemed it was all just a plot by Jessica and David. For the sake of this house, they had harmed me to this extent. How innocent the first was, yet I had to bear such immense pain. I had been mistaken for 3 years, believing Jessica and David truly loved me. It turned out all my suffering was caused by them. But what they didn't know was that when my father died, he also left a sum of nearly $30 million. I heard this money was earned from investments by my mother and my father, so in my father's will, he entrusted this money only to me and did not inform his adopted daughter, Jessica. This money had a 5-year lockup period. Now, the 5 years were almost up. I had originally planned to divide this money into 3 parts. David's business needed investment, and Jessica had an art dream. I knew this money could help them solve their difficulties. But now, I didn't want to give them a single penny. After hanging up with Michael Lee, I prepared to go to the hospital for a follow-up checkup. Seeing that I was about to go out, Jessica followed me. "Sister, I'll go with you to the hospital. Please don't be mad at me, okay?" She leaned in affectionately to link arms with me. I coldly pulled my hand away from her embrace. But the moment I pulled my hand away, she fell sideways, pretending to trip. "Sarah, what are you doing?" David's angry roar sounded in my ears. I turned to look at him and saw him rushing over to Jessica with a worried expression, helping her up. Before he could scold me, I spoke first. "I didn't do it, she fell herself." Yes, I fell myself, I just wasn't standing steady. Jessica lowered her head, looking pitiful. David looked at me. Sarah, what exactly do you want? We've been more than caring and accommodating because you're sick. You should be more sensible, shouldn't you? Seeing him no longer even bothering to pretend and openly defending Jessica, I scoffed and turned to walk out the door. When I returned from my hospital checkup, I saw Jessica and David sitting together on the couch, both with joyful expressions on their faces. Jessica, especially, came forward enthusiastically and took my hand as soon as she saw me. Sister, I've made a very important decision that I want to tell you about and get your support. I looked at David's slightly guilty expression and frowned. What decision? Well, I'm not planning to get married, but I do want to have a child, and this child will also be part of the family and care for us and your husband, won't they? Hearing her say this, my temples throbbed. As expected, her next sentence was, so, I want to ask to use your husband's sperm to have a child, would that be okay? The fact that she could say something like this meant she was already pregnant with David's child. Seeing I didn't speak, Jessica continued, don't worry, I won't touch your husband. I'm just borrowing your brother-in-law's sperm to go through IVF. She said, giving David a flirtatious look, as if afraid I wouldn't see it. Sarah, I agree to this. I'm willing to give Jessica a chance to have a child. Your health is already poor, and you can't have children. It's best if Jessica uses my sperm to have a child. That way, the 4-0 F us can be a happy family. A happy family? I chewed on those words, then smiled faintly. Okay, if you want to have one, go ahead. When I said this, David was visibly stunned. He seemed not to have expected me to agree so easily. He wanted to grab my arm, but Jessica grabbed his wrist and pulled him away. Thank you, sister. David and I will go to the hospital for a checkup now, Jessica said, pulling David towards the door. I returned to my room, took out the suitcase I had already packed, and quietly left. Passing the parking garage, I saw David's car shaking wildly. That evening, I took a high-speed train to a neighboring city. At the same time, David, who had just searched the house for me, received a call from Michael Lee. Mr. Davis, our client has decided to withdraw the investment fund for your company. Before David could say anything to Michael Lee, the front door of the house was pounded on fiercely. He opened the door to find several tall, muscular men standing on the doorstep. Is this Mr. Davis? Sarah has already sold this house to us. David was stunned. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Sarah sold the house? Impossible, she didn't tell me anything. Besides, I'm her husband, how could she sell the house without my consent? The men sneered. This house was Sarah's premarital property. Even if you are her husband, you have no right to interfere. With that, two of the men stepped forward and lifted David, throwing him out of the house. Jessica returned at this point. Seeing the scene before her, she rushed forward to argue with the men, but the men paid no attention to her, forming a wall at the doorway and coldly telling them, you have 1 day to pack your things. Otherwise, tomorrow we won't care what happens to them and will throw everything out. David and Jessica looked on in disbelief. David was the first to react, repeatedly calling my phone. Watching the screen light up continuously, I turned off my phone and put it away. I'd already arrived at my new house. The 5-year period was up, and the money my parents left me had been deposited. I used the money to buy a new house in a small town in a neighboring city. The house was already renovated, in a style I liked. I bought some soft furnishings and arranged the house to my liking. Looking at the decor throughout the house, I finally couldn't hold back the tears. After the incident 3 years ago, I had always thought I was just unlucky. Faced with David and Jessica's kindness, I had been full of gratitude, believing I had the best family. But who could have imagined that all my suffering was caused by them? David, unable to reach me by phone, had no choice but to move out of the house with Jessica and rent another place. Now, he wasn't in a hurry to find me. His most urgent task was to stabilize the investors. David's small business was started by my father, who had personally guided him when he was alive. After my father passed away, his business had a period of prosperity, but perhaps David truly had no business acumen. In the past 2 years, his company had been declining. To give him a surprise, as this inheritance was nearing its expiration, I had asked Michael Lee to inform David that a $5 million investment would be transferred into his company. If managed properly, this money would be enough to revive David's business. But now, I had withdrawn the funds. Michael Lee told me that David was completely desperate and had been waiting at his doorstep for several days, sincerely begging to see me. At this time, he still didn't know that the investor he was talking about was me. After hanging up with Michael Lee, I opened the WeChat app, which I hadn't used for a long time. After logging into my old account, David's messages popped up one after another. "Sarah, what are you doing? Haven't we been good enough to you? Are you using selling the house to threaten us? Where are you now? You're an adult, why are you still pulling this runaway stunt? Sarah, come back. If you really sold the house, can you lend me the money from the sale to tide me over? Stop being so willful. What did Jessica and I do to deserve this from you?" Looking at David's messages, my heart was as calm as still water. As much as I had loved him and Jessica before, I now loathed them just as much. I ultimately did not reply to David's messages. I opened Facebook and refreshed, seeing a new update from Jessica. In the photo, Jessica was leaning against the headboard, looking fragile. She was holding her still small bump, with the caption, "This is a hard one, child." I prayed to the heavens, begging for a safe delivery. In the corner of the photo, a large hand was peeling an apple. I recognized it as David's hand instantly, as he was still wearing the wedding ring he shared with me. Looking at the post, I couldn't help but comment with a cold laugh, "Jessica, child from an affair, truly hard one." Soon after, the post was deleted. At the same time, David's call came in. I answered the phone and was met with David's furious scolding. "Sarah, can't you be sensible? Jessica is pregnant, what nonsense are you spouting? Yes, she's pregnant with your child, of course you're worried. Yes, the child in Jessica's belly is mine, but isn't this child for us too? Do you know how hard IVF is for Jessica?" David didn't hesitate to rattle off the excuse they had clearly prepared. It was as if they had done me some immense favor, and I was the heinous villain. "Really? David, I'm just physically ill, not mentally disabled. Don't you even draft your lies before you tell them? How Jessica got pregnant, I'm sure I don't need to spell it out, right?" After I said this, there was silence on the other end for nearly 10 seconds. "If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. We've been so good to you, yet you doubt us," David said, acting completely unashamed. "This child will be for you and us in the future, to care for us in our old age and bring us joy. Since you can't have children yourself, and Jessica is willing to have one using my sperm, it's for the best. That way, the four of us can be a happy family." I hadn't expected David to continue lying even in this situation. I scoffed, and just as I was about to hang up, I heard David continue, "Sarah, I know you're upset right now, but don't hang up yet. I have something I need to tell you. Did you really sell the house we used to live in?" He then softened his tone. "If you really sold the house, then transfer the money from the sale to me. The company is in urgent need of funds right now. Are you just going to stand by and watch our business collapse?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but marvel at David's sheer audacity. Even in this situation, he could still ask me for money. "David, if you have a mental illness, go see a doctor." After saying this, I slammed the phone down. David eventually found my new place. It was a rainy evening, and I was curled up on the couch reading. Suddenly, there was an urgent knocking at the door. I looked through the peephole and saw David, soaked through, standing at my doorstep. "Sarah, Sarah, open the door. Sarah, do you really not want me anymore? Haven't you had enough of this tantrum?" David yelled and banged on the door. "Sarah, stop being difficult. You know you're not well. Come back quickly, so Jessica and I can take good care of you. Sarah, I know you're living here, open the door." David's voice grew louder and louder. To avoid disturbing the neighbors, I had no choice but to open the door. The moment he saw me, the corners of David's eyes turned red. I stood in the doorway, blocking his path forward. He looked past me into the space behind and frowned in displeasure. You sold the big house and now you're living in a place like this? I looked up at him. What's wrong with a place like this? At least it's decorated in a style I like. Hearing this, David's gaze shifted slightly. Can you stop being so willful? We changed the decor back then for your psychological well-being. I never resented you after what happened. Instead, I took the utmost care of you. Jessica even gave up the chance to move abroad to come back and look after you. How long are you going to keep this up? He looked at me, his eyes seemingly full of sincerity. But I knew very well that it was all just his lie. All he wanted, from beginning to end, was the money from my inheritance. So? After all that, all you want is the money from selling the house, isn't it? David was choked by my words. He said, my company is going through a difficult time right now. We're husband and wife. Are you really just going to watch it fail? Stop trying to emotionally blackmail me. I scoffed. You kept saying you loved me, protected me, and took care of me, but what's the truth? You know exactly what you've done, don't you? David was speechless. What have I done? Do I need to lay out everything that happened 3 years ago? You and Jessica, you know exactly what you did 3 years ago, don't you? And what you and Jessica really wanted when you kept saying you were taking care of me. I don't think I need to remind you, do I? You don't need to keep pretending to love me anymore. As my words fell, I looked up and met David's pale face. He stared at me blankly and mumbled, You know everything? I didn't answer his meaningless question. I simply stepped back and slammed the door shut. That day, David stood blankly at my door for 2 hours before leaving. I hired another lawyer to file for divorce. I didn't want to involve Michael Lee. I didn't want David and Jessica to know about the inheritance my father left me, or it might cause me even greater trouble. After I filed for divorce from David, the lawyer told me that David had outright refused. David explicitly told my lawyer that he didn't want to divorce me and demanded to talk to me face to face. Actually, I really didn't want to see David, but for the divorce to go smoothly, I agreed. If absolutely necessary, I would proceed with a lawsuit. The day I was scheduled to meet David, I went to the parking garage to get my car. But just as I reached the parking garage, Jessica emerged from the shadows nearby. She looked at me with disdain. Sarah, you really are my good sister. Since you already knew about what happened 3 years ago, I can't let you live. Besides, David and I are legally family with you. It doesn't matter if you don't want to give us the money from the house sale, we're heirs anyway. After saying this, Jessica clapped her hands, and several men came out from the shadows behind her. Seeing the faces of those men, the painful memories of 3 years ago instantly flooded back. These were the same men who had humiliated me 3 years ago. They had left my body broken, forcing me to live with a colostomy bag. David had supposedly handled them back then, even lying to me that they had all gone to prison. It turned out they were still alive and well outside. Jessica wasn't satisfied with humiliating me once, she wanted to do it again. Seeing this scene, I turned and ran, but before I had taken 2 steps, one of the tall men grabbed me by the shoulder and threw me to the ground. My good sister, you couldn't escape 3 years ago, and you can't escape today either, Jessica said, laughing softly. She caressed her belly. Originally, if you had just pretended you didn't know anything, I could have tolerated you and let the child call you auntie. But since you're seeking your own death, there's nothing I can do, is there? Do you know? I've never really liked you. If it weren't for you, my father might have had only me as a daughter. If he had only me, I wouldn't have had to choose between the house and the money. I looked at her and scoffed. You're my father's adopted daughter. My father was already incredibly generous to share his property with you, and yet you're treating his biological daughter like this. So what? This world is inherently about the strong preying on the weak. I'm already showing gratitude for his upbringing by leaving you alive, but you're deliberately seeking death now. If you hand over that money today, maybe I can let you go. But if you continue to be stubborn, I can't guarantee what these gentlemen here might do to you. After Jessica said this, the men looked at me with menacing smiles, rubbing their hands together. Jessica, what are you doing? Just then, David's voice came from behind me. I turned around and saw David looking at the scene with a shocked expression. He walked over, helped me up, and then stood in front of me, shielding me. He then looked at Jessica. What do you want? Seeing David standing in front of me protecting me, Jessica's face twisted with rage. I should be asking you what you want. Weren't you going to find a way to help him get the money Sarah got from selling the house? What is the meaning of this now, standing in front of her, protecting her? Don't forget I'm pregnant with your child. David looked up at her and said, word by word, I admit I'm desperate for money, but Jessica, I won't let you hurt Sarah. David, are you crazy? You're protecting her? Didn't you say I was the one you loved most? I'm having your child, I gave up my life abroad and came back to you, and this is how you treat me? Who do you think I did all this for? Wasn't it for you? Jessica shrieked hysterically, suddenly rushing towards me. David stood firmly in front of me, protecting me. The moment Jessica got close, he abruptly slapped her across the face. He must have used all his strength in that slap. Jessica stumbled and fell to the ground. She looked at David, her face pale, her eyes filled with disbelief and resentment. A warm fluid flowed from between her legs. She reached down and her hand came back covered in blood. What are you standing around for? I paid you. Grab these two B** cheese immediately. Jessica screamed wildly, pointing at me. My baby is gone. I want this little B** to pay with her life. Hearing her words, the men turned and moved to grab me. David protected me, shouting at Jessica, I won't let you touch a single hair on Sarah's head. I found it ironic. Now he wanted to protect me, but 3 years ago, he and Jessica had conspired together to ruin me like this. David, you don't need to pretend to be good to me. I won't invest the money from selling the house in your company. I looked at David coldly. A bitter expression appeared on David's face. Sarah, whether you believe me or not, this time I truly know I was wrong. This time, I really want to protect you. Even if I die, I won't let anyone harm you again. When you filed for divorce, I finally saw clearly what was in my heart. The person I truly love is only you. Being with Jessica was just for novelty and excitement. I actually harmed you like this for Jessica's sake. I truly know I was wrong. I listened to his words of regret expressionlessly and scoffed. Don't worry, you won't die. After I said that, Michael Lee rushed in with several police officers. The moment I saw Jessica, I knew something was wrong, so I quickly sent a distress signal to Michael Lee using my smartwatch. After receiving the message, Michael Lee immediately called the police and came with them. The men Jessica hired were thugs. This time, they were all rounded up. Since Jessica and David were the main culprits in harming me 3 years ago and were now attempting to harm me again, Jessica was sentenced to life in prison, and David was sentenced to 12 years. Seeing Michael Lee, David's face registered surprise. Michael Lee introduced him. This is my client, Miss Sarah, and also the investor you've been trying to meet but couldn't. What? Sarah, you. The person who was going to invest in my company was you. He looked at me in disbelief, trying to approach me, but the police officers by his side stopped him. I looked at him. Yes. Unfortunately, when I was planning to invest in you, I discovered your secret with Jessica. Otherwise, that money should have already been deposited into your company account. Hearing this, David immediately became distraught. He wanted to say something else to me, but the police were already escorting him to the patrol car. From now on, he could stay inside. Later, I gathered all my assets and moved to a small town that was very suitable for physical recovery. In the small town, I bought a small house with a yard. After relaxing, my body felt much better. A year later, Michael Lee sent me a message saying that David had attempted suicide. He had been spoiled and coddled by his family his whole life. Now in prison, no one catered to him or indulged him, everyone wanted to step on him. He couldn't bear the humiliation and eventually chose to commit suicide. However, his suicide attempt was unsuccessful. He was saved. After waking up, his mental state was never normal. He kept muttering, "Sarah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let Jessica do that to you. I was wrong, Sarah, forgive me."